What's up? Professor Wergeles here. Today we're on lecture 29. This is actually after the lecture. I'm going back and redoing Thread Playground. I'm also going to continue on with some of the future lectures. So go to lecture 29, download the zip, unzip it, load it up into NetBeans, and let's go ahead and take a look at Thread Playground. Now, first things first, when you open up this challenge, you're going to see a few things. We actually have quite a few different thread classes that we're going to look at. And the first thing that we need to do is check the main class. So you'll see this is called Thread Playground. Open up threadplayground.java. And you're going to see some things here. So this is normally how you load an FXML file. So you'll see the load function or method. It's being called by a class. You'll see I did not create an instance of FXML loader. I'm calling the FXML loader class and calling the method directly. So just by looking at this code, I know it's a static method. But just to be sure, you can do a show Java doc, pull up the documentation, and look to see whether that's correct or not. You'll see in the docs, you'll see the load method is static. That's correct. But I don't even need to look at the docs. I know that because it's using the class name and calling the method. So when I load this FXML file, I'm going to load it into the root. The root will be the first element in the FXML file. So if I right click and do an edit, you'll see the top elements in anchor pane. So this is going to be my root. And in the main class, that's going to be stored to the parent. Parent is the superclass of all containers. So if I come back over here to FXML and let's say I look at anchor pane, I don't know if you can do a show Java doc here, but if I go back to the docs and if I do a JavaFX anchor pane, you can see here anchor pane is of type pane, which is region, which is a parent, which is a node, which is an object. So here's the object superclass. And then inside that, I have a JavaFX node. And then inside that, I have a JavaFX parent, JavaFX region, JavaFX pane, and JavaFX anchor pane. So parent will be the superclass for all JavaFX containers. So that's why I'm using this here, and I'm just using it so it can be anything. It can be an anchor pane, it could be a V box, an H box, it can be a stack pane, whatever type of pane or layout element you want to use, it can be used here. And then I put that into the scene, and then I show the scene on the stage, and I go ahead and display the stage for the user. Now, this stage variable is a parameter, which means once the start method loads the FXML file and shows the stage, and the start method is finished executing, this stage variable will be destroyed. When I click play, that stage is created and passed here as a parameter. Now, when I'm using threads, if the user closes the window, you don't want that thread to keep running. So instead of loading the FXML load method based off the class, I'm actually going to comment this out, and I'm going to create an instance of the FXML loader. So I'll say FXML loader, and we can call it whatever we want. Let's just call it loader for now. And I'm going to use the new keyword, call the constructor. And in the constructor, I'm going to pass the same thing. So I'm going to copy and paste it so I don't have to write it again. From the current class, I'm going to get a resource, and the resource is going to be the FXML file. Okay, that works perfectly. Now I'm going to go ahead and call the load method, which we did before. Okay, I'm going to call the load method, and I'm going to store that into the parent just like they did. So I'm going to say parent root equals our loader.load. And I don't need to pass anything because I've already loaded the FXML file in the object being created. Now, why am I doing this? The reason I'm doing this is if I look in the FXML files, if I right click and do an edit and scroll all the way over to the right, you'll see the FX controller. It's in the Thread Playground package, and the class is called User Interface Controller. You'll see that right here. So I have the controller defined in the FXML file. And what I want to do is I want to pass the stage over to the controller So whenever I close the stage, I can terminate the threads. If I don't do this, then even if the user terminates the stage, the program will continue running in the background until the threads have finished executing. This is a bad programming practice. When they close the app, you want your threads to terminate. You don't want them to continue. Otherwise, you're going to have a memory leak, and you could have a lot of potential problems there. So now that I have the loader, which is the FXML file, I'll also have access to the controller. So I want to define the controller. It's called the user interface controller. That's the type. I could probably use a superclass here, so it could be any controller. And from the controller, I'm going to, or sorry, from the loader, I'm going to get the controller. So if I do loader and I say get controller, you'll see it will return controller. Now this controller, if I do a show Java doc, will actually be a generic type. So whatever controller is defined is what controller will be returned. See how it says type T? That's a generic type. So whatever controller is defined will be the type that's returned. I want to ensure that it's going to load my type. So I'm going to use an explicit cast here. You'll see the code compiled fine without it. By doing an explicit cast here, it's going to promise or ensure that this controller being returned is of this type. And if it's not, you'll get a runtime error. Okay, so you can't even start the program. So you'll see one line went to 3 lines, but now I actually have access to the controller. So now I can use the controller. I've made a ready method, and you'll see ready method takes the stage. So I do the dot notation. This is in the controller. This is our predefined method. I made this. It's a custom method. The ready method takes the stage and stores it over there in the controller. Now, if you go back to previous lectures, we actually got the stage a different way. We were in the controller. We had to write some kind of tricky lines of code to get the stage so we could show the on file save menu option when we were handling file inputs and outputs back in the exception lectures. That way will work, although this way is much cleaner. The stage that was created when I clicked the play button is passed to the start method, and now I'm passing that stage to the controller. This is just a much cleaner way. And in fact, we're going to need this stage not only for threads, but if you want to switch scenes or if you want to do anything else. So pretty much all of our lectures from now on to the end of the semester, we're going to change the main class to be implemented this way. That way we can have an instance of the stage before it's destroyed once the start method is finished executing. You'll see the rest of the lines of the code are the same. So I pass the root to the scene, set the scene to the stage, and then go ahead and show the stage to the user. If I go over here to the controller, you'll see I have my ready method. I pass the stage over to it and set it as a global variable or a class field. And then I do an on close request. So whenever this on close request, whenever they close the stage, this event listener will get triggered. Okay, it'll get triggered. It's a window event. So once they close the window, this function or this method will be called. And then we need to terminate the threads, which we'll do here shortly. Now, we're going to talk about the first way to create a thread. So we did this in click point animation. So click point animation, we talked about all the different ways, but we did it so quickly. We're going to go back over the different ways to create threads. The first way, we're going to look into counter thread 1. This is counter thread 1. Okay, we're going to do that in the next video. So stick with Professor Wergeles, and we'll see you in the next video.